Good morning, Upper Fandom. I hope you're doing well and that your noisy neighbor stays quiet, because we have plenty to discuss today. Cold like the weather, let's dive into the second tool of culture technology, psychological types. Before we begin, I want to express my gratitude to my dear friend Muskin. 3 years ago, she found me and encouraged my research to levels I couldn't have imagined. It was a long journey, but we finally made it happen. Thank you, Muskin. Before diving into the psychological profiles showcased by the K-pop industry, it's important to revisit a basic scientific idea: the psychology of personality. Profiles we're going to talk about, like the dandy, the nurturing type, the playful one, the guardian, or the leader, aren't new or just made-up concepts for K-pop. They reflect genuine human traits that have been seen across different societies for a long time. Wash your hands, Upper Fandom, because this episode is really, really dirty. Modern psychology talks about a popular model to help us understand these differences: the Big Five, created by Robert McCrae and Paul Costa. This model looks at human personality through 5 main traits: openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. Instead of putting people into strict boxes, these traits show us the stable patterns that can change from one person to another. Research has found that these traits stay pretty consistent over time, appear in all cultures, and are shaped by both our biology and surroundings. It means that these traits are genetic characteristics, basically our ADN. Studies involving twins and families have also revealed that these traits can be inherited, along with the influence of our social experiences and environment, but to a limited extent, as explained by John, Nauman, and Soto in their research titled Paradigm Shift to the Integrative Big Five Trait Taxonomy. Some folks are just naturally compassionate and protective by nature. Others are outgoing and charming. Some individuals experience emotions intensely, while others are highly organized and dependable. These differences in characteristics are there even before any media shows them. These people are just born this way. This is human. These character traits don't just stay inside us. They really affect the people around us. For instance, empathetic folks are more likely to earn the trust of others. Expressive individuals grab attention more easily, and reassuring people make others feel emotionally connected to them. Attachment theory, created by John Bowlby, tells us that humans naturally look for figures who provide them with security and support. That's why some people are super attractive. On the flip side, Albert Bandura showed that we learn by watching people we admire, which helps explain why we often try to imitate charismatic figures. In real life, though, this influence usually stays within our close circle, like family, friends, and colleagues. You have to understand that these characteristics impact people in real life, but the impact happens just in friend, work, or relationship circle. First off, it's super important to grasp one key idea: people don't just randomly like certain traits. Personality psychology models, especially the Big Five, show that our own traits really shape what we look for in others. Whether we're more empathetic, anxious, extroverted, conscientious, or open, we naturally find ourselves attracted to specific qualities in other people. This is a totally normal and human thing. We often seek out in others what helps balance our own emotional needs: stability when we feel anxious, expressiveness when we're low on emotional energy, gentleness when we're feeling insecure, and confidence when we're doubting ourselves. It's really important to remember that these traits aren't just things we feel inside. They actually have a real and noticeable impact on the world around us, and that's the key thing to keep in mind: the impact. In everyday life, however, I say it again, I know, but these dynamics usually stay limited to small circles: family, close friends, coworkers. The relationships are direct, mutual, and grounded in real interactions. This is exactly the natural framework that the industry expands artificially. It doesn't invent these mechanisms, it doesn't create these personalities, their effects, or their impact. Instead, it amplifies them, shifts them, and reproduces them at scale, exposing the same psychological traits to millions of people at the same time. What works on a small human scale in real life then becomes a global tool of attraction and seduction. One more time. What works on a small human scale in real life then becomes a global tool of attraction and seduction. In real life, these things usually happen between a few people. You might admire a friend, feel comforted by someone kind because he is actually kind by nature, or look up to someone you find inspiring because he actually is. It's natural, and it stays small. What the K-pop industry does is take those same feelings, same traits, and use them in order to link people to these idols. Instead of one comforting person, millions of people see the same comforting traits that isn't genuine. Something that normally works between a few humans is repeated on a worldwide level. That's how attraction and attachment become global. Not because fans are weak, but because the K-pop system steals normal human feelings and spreads them everywhere at once. And why this is problematic. These feelings are, first of all, completely faked, and second of all, those aren't happening in a normal situation anymore. In real life, when you admire someone or feel emotionally close to them, there's balance. You can talk to them, disagree, grow apart, or move on. The relationship has limits. In K-pop, those same but faked feelings are pushed nonstop, but without real balance. The idol can't respond to you personally. They can't set boundaries with each fan. They can't adjust the relationship if it becomes unhealthy. But the emotions keep growing anyway. So the brain keeps reacting as if there's a real connection, while reality never catches up. That gap can cause emotional dependence, feeling overly attached to someone you don't actually know, feeling hurt, jealous, or anxious over things you can't control, and difficulty separating admiration from personal identity. The problem is when normal human feelings are intentionally stole, then amplified, repeated everywhere, and never given a natural ending. This is the reason why K-pop feel different, and why this calculated idol act like a 3 years old. This can slowly become overwhelming, especially when the system benefits from keeping fans emotionally engaged for as long as possible. Imagine a world where K-pop fans, no matter if they're 14 years old or 80 years old, come together through shared traits that go beyond age. Why is that, you wonder? Well, these traits, which are deeply rooted in our genetics, help agencies meet the natural behavioral needs of everyone. K-pop isn't about age or being part of an elite group. It's all about the way it's built. Needs like feeling safe, being recognized, connecting with others, getting reassurance, and finding inspiration don't just fade away as we get older. Not one bit. They just show up in different ways as time goes on. When a K-pop industry creates characters based on the personality psychology model, like the Big Five, to meet personal needs and wishes, it naturally connects with people of all ages. That's why K-pop doesn't focus on marketing by age, but instead on how well it aligns with our personality. In short, the psychological profiles of idols are a part of who we are as humans and have always influenced our social bonds. What makes K-pop unique isn't just its creation, since K-pop didn't invent those traits, but rather how it has been consistently and globally used to foster love, dependencies, and obsession for profit. What once was a simple human interaction has evolved into a global method of emotional influence, where personality shifts from something we experience to something we purchase. I really don't like to say this, but I have to keep repeating it. Sasaengs aren't just a rare occurrence. They're the end of the fan journey. They are the expectations, and we all know that not everyone can meet them. But some do, and it's more than enough. Let's take one clear example of a psychological type based on high agreeableness. People who score high in agreeableness are empathetic, sensitive to others, and emotionally attentive. They value harmony, kindness, and emotional safety. To attract people with these traits, the industry often creates an idol who can embody warmth and reassurance. How this type behaves? They are polite, gentle, and careful with their words. They thank fans often, express concern easily, and avoid conflict. They are shown as caring, patient, and emotionally considerate. Their agencies made them learn facial expressions and mannerisms that correspond to this type: soft smiles, calm eye contact, relaxed facial expressions. They nod while listening, tilt their head slightly, and react with visible empathy. Nothing sharp, aggressive, or intimidating. Their stylists know the kind of clothes and visual style this type should have: comfortable, soft-looking outfits, neutral or pastel colors, loose sweaters, cardigans, cozy layers. The message is subtle but clear: I'm safe, I won't judge you. Now, who feels naturally drawn to this type? People who are emotionally sensitive, people who dislike tension or conflict, people who need reassurance, emotional warmth, or a sense of being accepted. They don't think, I need a comfort figure. They just feel drawn to that idol instinctively, and that's the key point. And that reaction is completely human. What the K-pop system does is take a personality configuration that would normally resonate within a small social circle and amplify it. The same signals: kindness, softness, emotional availability are repeated consistently across interviews, performances, styling, and content. So the attraction doesn't come from age, hype, or coincidence. It comes from a match between personality traits and emotional signals. This is how the same idol can appeal to a teenager, an adult, or an elderly fan. Not because they share the same lifestyle, but because they share the same underlying psychological needs. And this is only one trait configuration. Upper fandom, only one trait. Y'all just have no idea how many traits, how many psychological types are practiced and learned in order to attract folks. Yes, as much as possible. But me, Idoldex, I relieved more than 30 psychological types used in the K-pop sphere. Fresh, new analytics about the effect, impacts, clothing styles, sentences. I covered almost everything. Are you ready? Let's get into a profile that's both a bit disturbing and super popular. You all know it well. It's the baby seducer. This character has to act like a delicate, helpless little one, usually around 2 to 4 years old, to create a cozy, almost parental bond with fans. Think about that lively child in your neighborhood or family who runs around, plays, and gets into all sorts of fun trouble. They might apologize softly, have those big curious eyes, and cry for a toy. Sometimes they even doubt themselves. In these moments, parents step in to play a special role. They reassure them with, "You can do it." They cheer them on with, "Great job," and they encourage them even when the little one feels unsure. The child doesn't say, "I'm fragile," or "I need help." Instead, they send little psychological signals to their mom or dad that clearly show they need some care. The adult feels a sense of responsibility for the child. If they ignore them, a feeling of guilt creeps in. They think, "He's so fragile, he needs me." Generally, if a mother leaves her child, she might be seen as a bad mom. She'll feel like she's abandoned her little one who relies on adults, this delicate, helpless being with those round eyes who speaks softly. As you may have figured out, the baby seducer role aims to mimic the bond between a mother and her child, since that parent-child connection is much tougher to sever and harder to break than a romantic one. This is why it stands out as the most popular, frequently used, and most disturbing type. Let's dive into exploring this psychological type, upper fandom. The baby seducer doesn't draw you in with desire, but rather through a unique kind of emotional neediness. Their actions don't scream, "Look at me," but instead whisper, "Take care of me." Their allure isn't about being strong, it's about pretending to be weak, which taps into our natural instincts, like a mother's for her little one, the urge to nurture and protect. This isn't just something we learn from culture, it's something we feel deep down, like the sixth sense. Our brains light up when we see certain visual and behavioral signs like big eyes, clumsy movements, a gentle voice, and emotional openness. These signs, which Lorenz called the small child schema, trigger an instant feeling of care and responsibility in adults. Scientifically, the baby seducer matches a special mix of personality traits. In K-pop, these traits are brought to life, acted out, and given a stylish twist. This profile will be taught to show a very high agreeableness that encourages gentleness, kindness, and a sense of security, a very low dominance and a low to medium extroversion that fosters a friendly and non-threatening connection, a slightly visible neuroticism, which evokes feelings of empathy and protectiveness. medium conscientiousness, which strengthens the perception of natural sincerity, and a low to medium openness to experience that preserves the impression of innocence and naivety. When we bring all these pieces together, we can spot 3 psychological traits: warmth, vulnerability, plus no threat equals instant connection. That's why this role is super important at the start of a K-pop group, as it helps build a lasting bond and a really strong connection right from the beginning. This connection is tied to how an idol is given their own psychological age. The more the idol acts like a very young child, the stronger that bond will be. This should be between the ages of 2 and 4. Why is that? Because this is exactly the time in human growth when attachments are the strongest, most one-sided, and least logical. According to John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth in the attachment theory, a child aged 2 to 4 years is not completely dependent anymore, but still emotionally seeks security. They look for constant reassurance from their parent and show their feelings in clear ways, like crying, laughing, or wanting to be close. This is a time when wanting attention and being scared of being left alone are at their highest. The baby seducer mimics these signals perfectly. A shy look, a soft but shaky voice, unsure movements, quick sorries, a smile to make things right, and a quest for approval. All of this gets the parental attachment brain system in the viewer all fired up. The fan doesn't feel overpowered. He feels a sense of responsibility. And scientifically, responsibility is one of the toughest connections to let go of. So this type has 3 human traits: warmth, low dominance, and visible fragility. Together, these traits mean safe, lovable, needs me. That needs me part is the hook. Next, this type learns phrases that do one thing. They gently lower his status. It's not about humiliation or submission, just cues of emotional dependence. They often include self-doubt, phrases like "I'm not sure I did well," some effort language like "I'll try harder," or "it was my fault," even when it clearly wasn't their fault. Gratitude to bond, so the idol might say "thank you for staying with me," and soft insecurity phrases like "I was nervous." These phrases trigger 2 psychological processes. The first one is the caretaking response, where the listener feels the urge to reassure. The second one is the "I matter" response. The fan's brain will say, if he is fragile, then my support has meaning. In neuropsychology, this sparks dopamine pathways connected to moral satisfaction, a psychological idea that explains the joy of doing good. And this is where it gets dangerous. Fans don't just feel affection. No, they feel purpose. They think they need to take care of this idol as a parent toward their kid, even if the fan agree or not. He will feel deep down that he has to do it. The parent-kid dynamics in real life is most one-sided. Dad or mom care for their kid because they have to, and not in exchange of love like couple dynamics. And this relationship is the least logical one because the kid can be rude, loud, do mistakes, or else the parent will still care for their kid. This is why this is the most popular type and also the most used. You could say, yeah, but it's a Korean cultural thing to act like a kid. Maybe yes, maybe no. The psychological effects doesn't change because it's a cultural thing. The same brain parts will be activated wherever the country you live in, and that's the point of the cultural technology. Now, let's talk about the face. The baby seducer uses a really consistent mix of tiny expressions that come together to create a whole set of childlike signals. This usually includes wide-eyed listening, which shows that they're paying attention and are open, a quick soft smile that pops up and vanishes just as fast to keep things friendly, little oops expressions that hint at being harmlessly clumsy, a very shy, quiet laugh, a slight head tilt when someone is chatting with them, which shows they're really listening, some tiny pouts that suggest a bit of vulnerability, and brows that are gently raised, showing a little worry. It's super important to know that these expressions aren't random at all. Instead, they are clear signals of being non-threatening and needing support. Because of this, our brains pick up on them right away. There's no need to think about it. Just like a parent doesn't think about protecting their child, you just feel that urge to do it. You just feel like you need to protect this idol. There's something interesting about gestures and behaviors that can trigger the brain, like those permission-seeking gestures. You might notice a little wave or a pause before someone speaks, hands held close to the chest instead of reaching out, taking small steps forward and then stepping back, or looking at others for a nod or sign of approval or nonverbal cues like, "Is this okay?" shown through their posture or eye contact. Because of this, it makes him seem socially safe, non-competitive, and a bit dependent on others for guidance. Just like the idol needs someone to help him walk or stay close to him when he's in a new place. I also noticed some accidental touch behaviors, where intimacy sneaks in through what seems like unintentional contact. It's not about open seduction. Instead, it's more like those gentle oops-style moments, such as bumping shoulders, holding onto sleeves, lightly tugging an arm, or leaning into someone followed by laughter. This way, intimacy is shared without being forced. It's the baby core dynamic. Closeness feels innocent rather than intentional. When things get a bit tense, this type is often used to help smooth things over. The idol will pick up on quick apologies, reassuring smiles, a little self-blame, and a repeated "it's my fault, excuse me," or "I should have been there" tone. Because of this, he turns into the group's emotional cushion, soaking up the tension and bringing back a sense of balance. Styling this psychological type here isn't just about what's trendy, it's more like a special language that helps us understand the meaning. Cozy materials and gentle shapes, big layers that soften edges, cardigans, knits and snuggly fabrics, pastel, cream, or soft neutral colors, a smooth absence of sharp edges or bold lines. The visual goal is clear, not sexy, but friendly and welcoming. Body shape and framing go hand in hand, just like how we show off our bodies in a similar way. This type is usually surrounded by less visual dominance, not as broad, not as heavy. They wear clothes that smooth out shoulder and waistlines, a kind of stance that keeps the body snug instead of spread out, and even when the body is fit and strong, the way it's presented gently lessens its effect. This is really important because how we see power can mess up the idea of caring for others, and this character can't work if that dream falls apart. During choreography, this type is often placed near the center during cute hook lines, at the front during playful or light sections, and surrounded by other members during key shots. This setup sends a visual message that says, look, he's small in the middle of the group. This arrangement reliably triggers protective instincts in viewers. Also, this character is rarely used to lead power-based movements. His role is to react to the audience, smile at the camera at just the right moments, and deliver short but emotionally resonant soft impact cues. Through this role, he becomes a bridge between the performance itself and the viewer's emotional experience. Even in intense choreographies, the movement quality is often subtly adjusted. Specifically, those kinds of actions are slightly lighter, less sharp, less aggressive in arm dynamics, or less dominant in hip placement or stance. This adjustment isn't systematic in every sequence, but it happens often enough to keep the character's integrity intact. Oh, and we shouldn't forget about the camera work, because camera direction plays a crucial role. Close-ups during a nervous laugh, close-ups right after a visible mistake, close-ups during gentle or emotionally soft lines, and some quick cuts to the face when other members tease him. Importantly, these shots aren't meant to showcase technical skill. Instead, they serve as bond-building cues. At the group level, balance is super important. And within this setup, the baby seducer plays two key roles that help keep everything steady, both in terms of ideas and feelings. First, he acts like a gentle anchor. When things get too intense or emotionally heavy, he brings back a sense of softness and helps everyone feel more stable, preventing any overload. Second, he serves as a safe target for the group to tease without any real risk, and he takes on the role of the baby, the one everyone cares for openly, which creates a warm, family-like vibe. When fans sense this family atmosphere, they feel like they're part of their family. Now, it's important to look beyond the simple idea that fans just want to protect him. In reality, the effects are coming like a chain reaction. At first, tenderness leads to fans keeping an eye on him, checking if he's okay, if he slept well, or if he seems sad in a certain clip. Over time, this watching turns into a sense of responsibility, where fans start to feel that if they're not around, no one will notice the idol. Because of this, times when he's less active, like fewer updates or less content, can cause emotional stress. This stress can then lead to changes in behavior, such as constantly streaming his content, fiercely defending him against critics, feeling jealous of others, and feeling upset when he interacts with someone else. It's really important to note that this doesn't start as toxicity, it begins as care. However, when care doesn't have boundaries, it can slowly turn into control. For some fans, their sense of self-worth can become tied to this mother role, leading them to believe they are good or valuable because they protect him. This belief can be really sticky, which is why leaving the fandom doesn't feel like moving on, but feels like abandoning someone. This character attracts fans who are really agreeable tend to connect well with this type because they naturally lean towards being cooperative, compassionate, and in tune with emotions. Lots of psychological studies show that agreeable people are more likely to respond positively when they see someone who seems fragile or dependent. So when they come across the baby seducer, they don't just notice the softness or vulnerability, they feel a strong urge to step in and offer reassurance, encouragement, and emotional support. For these folks, caring feels rewarding rather than like a chore, since agreeableness is closely tied to wanting to help others, feeling morally satisfied by being useful, and creating harmony in relationships. In this situation, affection quickly turns into a protective bond, not because the fan wants to take control, but because their personality is designed to help lessen the emotional risks that others might feel. At the same time, this character really draws in people who have high levels of neuroticism, which means they are more sensitive to emotions, feel anxious, and react strongly to stress signals. These fans tend to read too much into small emotional hints, feel responsible for how others are feeling, and look for comfort through consistency and closeness. When the baby seducer shows a bit of nervousness, self-doubt, or emotional vulnerability, it sets off a cycle of anxiety and care where worry leads to watching closely. Watching brings a little relief, and not being in touch becomes emotionally tough. Over time, emotional comfort isn't just found through direct interaction anymore. It comes from staying engaged with content, updates, and a sense of closeness. What starts as caring slowly turns into an inside feeling of obligation rather than something imposed from outside. Also, fans who struggle with low self-esteem are especially open to this psychological type, because caregiving gives them something that feels stable, like a valued role. In their daily lives, people with low self-worth often find it hard to feel capable, helpful, or one of a kind, while the baby seducer offers an instant sense of importance by making support seem meaningful and necessary. In this way, supporting the idol turns into a way for fans to validate themselves, and they don't just enjoy the character, they also find a boost to their identity through the act of caring. Moreover, some fans are motivated not by anxiety or low self-esteem, but by a strong desire for meaning and emotional structure. These folks look for stories that help organize their feelings and guide their emotional investments, and the baby seducer provides a straightforward, clear role focused on watching over, encouraging, and following growth over time. As a result, everyday fan activities like streaming, defending, and checking updates become meaningful work instead of just passive enjoyment, and emotional investment turns into a ritual that's hard to question, where real sources of purpose from the real life are slowly replaced by a psychological character. Once activated at scale, this type becomes one of the most powerful engines of long-term fan engagement. Fans stay, they watch, they try to connect with life, but they worry and they return. So we just dropped the first psychological character type, and it's all about mixing 3 different personality traits together. As you explore each new type, you'll see how they actually work together. Take the baby seducer archetype. This one would do an even better impact when paired with a maternal character or a rake. Now here's the thing. Some idols might need to juggle multiple psychological types at once to connect with different groups of fans, but we'll get into that rabbit hole another time. Up next, we're talking about the scandal magnet, basically the character archetype that's basically a magnet for gossip, rumors, and everyone's watchful eyes. Here's what you need to remember. Upper fandom, everything here is totally intentional. Whether the look changes or the name shifts around, the machine underneath never does. And that's a wrap on Idoldex, folks.